It is Tuesday, September the 17th, 2024. It's the Desmond Johnson Show. It's the Tuesday edition. David Glenn in the house, his bi-weekly joint in the co-host chair. Him and Jalen Gilkey tag teaming that every Tuesday from the North Carolina Sports Network. Got a loaded show today. We'll get you in and out on your lunch break. We're talking Panthers. We're talking 0-3 Florida State. We're talking Tua. We're talking who's DG's best North Carolina college team 2 games into the season. We're talking Wake Forest, Ole Miss. We're getting all of it. It's the Desmond Johnson Show.
Live with Desmond Johnson, son, the live is one. Represent NC to the fullest.
Yeah, welcome to the Carolinas. Everywhere you go, the sky is Carolina blue, the finest. Live action, feedback, the city need that. I've been #1, no cap. Here's the recap. Adrenaline is my addiction. I'm about to relapse. Step on the turf if you won't and get your weed whack. I'm going harder than a martyr on the starter end. It's the heart of man, that's a rap like a cardigan. I'm breaking records, it's 4th and inches. I count the seconds. The over-under's my roar of thunder, my secret weapon. Yeah, the game is to be told. I don't break, I break modes. Follow me on Tobacco Road.
Live with Desmond Johnson, son, the live is one. Represent NC to the fullest.
And it is a live Tuesday edition of the Desmond Johnson Show here on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, brought to you by Emergency Responders Credit Union. Desmond Johnson in the house with my main man, David Glenn from the North Carolina Sports Network. DG, we had a loaded weekend and a lot to process. What's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm doing great, Des. It's always good to be with you.
Let's just jump into it. I know people are on their lunch break here. It's a busy Tuesday around the Triad. I know you pulled your phones out and you got them situated at your lunch table and you're ready to rock and roll. Let's just hit all of it. And we're going to do Sports Buffet with DG. Biggest story probably, I guess, in the Carolinas dropped yesterday. The Carolina Panthers Dave Canales basically choosing to pull the plug on the Bryce Young experiment for now and start veteran Andy Dalton as the Panthers are going to go to Las Vegas to take on the Raiders at 4 o'clock on Sunday. Thoughts on this? Do you think it was too soon, too early? It seems like there's a variety of views on how they could have handled this or should have handled this. Do you think Dave Canales handled this the right way? And from watching tape of Bryce the past 2 weeks, was it the right decision?
Well, Bryce Young has not yet shown under 2 different head coaches that he is capable of being an above-average NFL quarterback. And if you're a first-time head coach like Dave Canales and you're worried about possibly losing the locker room, I mean, did you see the veteran wide receiver Adam Thielen very demonstratively in front of the world showing his frustration after Bryce Young missed a wide-open Thielen on an important play in a game where the Panthers were already being embarrassed? We don't know everything that's going on behind the curtain, but we do know that Andy Dalton has been a slightly above average quarterback in his career. And if you're worried about a snowball that's rolling downhill in the wrong direction getting worse, and you don't think Bryce Young is ready right now to be the answer, then I understand the move to the backup. And maybe you let Bryce Young watch things from a different perspective. This is emergency time, Des, because this franchise had a shot at answering the quarterback question. They rolled the dice with Bryce Young. It looks like a bad decision to this point. And now they're just trying to salvage something of the 2024 season after they clearly out of the gate have looked like what many expected them to be, and that is the worst team in the National Football League.
Yeah, we just did Believe in Panthers like an hour ago with Jonathan Stewart and Skylar Callahan, and I was trying to think back. I was like, I don't remember a season starting like this. Like, there's just no hope whatsoever, it feels like. I mean, they've been outscored like 90-13 or something like that in 2 games. It's just been ridiculous. But with Bryce, it's weird because, yes, last year we gave him a mulligan. We were basically like, okay, nothing was right. The offensive coordinators were arguing with each other, going behind each other's backs, going to Tepper. Like, it was never going to work for you. We're going to give you a mulligan. Like, this is really your rookie season. And with everything they did in the offseason, they fixed the offensive line because, to be honest, he's had pretty clean pockets the past 2 weeks. He's just been abandoning them after 2 seconds, and that's probably some sort of PTSD from last year, getting sacked 60 times. But it feels like he's regressed from where he was last year, which is crazy because Dave Canales kind of has the QB whisperer label going on, especially with smaller size quarterbacks. They fixed the interior of the offensive line. They went out and got wide receivers for him that could separate. Yet it feels almost like he's processing too fast, whereas last year he was too slow with it. Whereas, like, something internally in him, like when he gets the snap, within 2 seconds, he's already rolling out left or right to get out of the way, but he still doesn't have the pocket awareness. So like when he rolls out the way, there's a DT right on his heels and he doesn't feel him. Or he ran into a sack on Sunday where he was trying to scramble. He went towards the left sideline. It looked like he was trying to motion somebody to go out, and he just got sacked. Like a dude standing right in front of him, and like he had nowhere to go. It just seems like his awareness is off. I chalk it up to confidence. Like I think they were on the road of completely breaking Bryce Young. I think Dave Canales recognized it and thought, if we get him out now and have him sit, and he knows what his role is, and Andy can run this team, we might still be able to salvage him. We still have him for 2 more years minimum. Like we still may be able to fix this, and if not, maybe we can get to a point where we can get something back for what we spent to get him in the first place. The trick is to know when you might have picked wrong, and that's the problem here because I've always thought this was a Nicole and David Tepper pick, Bryce Young. Like I never thought it was Scott Fitter. I never thought it was Dan Morgan or Lord knows Frank Wright. I think Frank Wright wanted C.J. Stroud, looking back in hindsight. But if this is wrong, this could set the franchise back a couple of years. So they've got some time. I like the idea of sitting him down and letting things get slower for him. Let's move on to college real quick. Florida State. We tend to talk about Florida State whenever you're on with us for one reason or another. Usually it's some kind of legal thing, but we actually get to talk a little football about Florida State. They're 0-3 after dropping to Memphis. They were undefeated last year and just left out of the college football playoff to go from that into 0-3. Your thoughts on Florida State? Can this season be salvaged, or have you seen enough to make you think that, there's some problems here in Tallahassee?
Oh, there's problems in Tallahassee, and there's no doubt about it. Most of them are on the offensive side of the ball. But it really starts with maybe an obvious place to start, and that is just sheer talent. You and I have been together a long time, whereas coaching matters and experience matters and confidence and psychology and all those things matter. It starts with the Jimmies and the Joes. Yeah. And the starting point to understand what's happening at Florida State requires, regardless of what anybody might have as the rest of the theory, and we could go in 10 different directions with that part. But anybody who doesn't start here doesn't get it and is missing the point. There are ACC programs, Des, that right now have a grand total of 11 or 12 players in the National Football League. That's from all their recent teams combined. Georgia Tech, for example, has 11 or 12 players on NFL rosters. I bring that up because from Florida State's ACC title team of a year ago, there are 11 NFL rookies at that level. That is a massive exodus of talent. It is extremely rare for any college team to produce 11 NFL rookies from a single college team, mind you, right?
Yeah.
So it's not just Jordan Travis and an adjustment to a lesser DJ Uiagalelei at quarterback. It's Trey Benson was a star at running back, and the Seminoles don't have a star at that position right now. It's Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson are both on NFL rosters, and the Seminoles don't have a star at that position right now. It's Jaheim Bell is in the NFL, and the Seminoles don't have a star at tight end. Same thing on the defensive side of the ball. Guys like Jared Verse, high NFL draft pick, couple of D-backs. It's an incredible exodus of talent from Tallahassee. That didn't mean I expected them to be 0-3 out of the gate. And by the way, it's 3-0 Cal going to Tallahassee this week. So it's not a guaranteed win for the Seminoles this week either.
Good old ACC brother, Cal.
Yeah, I mean, it is hard to believe the Seminoles are 0-3. It's easy to see why they've had a step back. I just didn't think it would be a crash back to earth. I thought it would be more of an adjustment period. It's still a talented defense, but that offense right now is averaging 15 points per game. That is 17th, dead last in the ACC, and the pieces just aren't fitting together on that side of the ball right now.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what they can do in season to kind of, push the snowball back uphill. But Florida State, probably the biggest surprise in college football, starting off the season 0-3. David Glenn here with me on a Tuesday edition of the Desmond Johnson Show. You can follow him on X at David Glenn Show. Let's stay in college for just a second. I know you guys do excellent work in terms of following the North Carolina colleges here in the state of North Carolina and their football programs. Right now, you've had 2 weeks to kind of see everybody. And yeah, there's been a variety of levels of competition that these teams have played. over the course of 2 weeks to open the season. Which North Carolina University college football team have you been the most impressed with first 2 weeks of the season?
Well, it's a hard answer because there's not a great team in this state right now. There's 7 FBS programs. The Charlotte 49ers are really struggling. ECU is doing okay, but you can tell that they're just trying to bounce back from last year's 2-10 disaster. And whereas Duke and Carolina both have pretty records right now, I mean, they're both 3-0 and they deserve credit for that. I don't think either of those is a complete team. Duke can't run the ball very well. And the Tar Heels are now on their 3rd quarterback, and it's only 3 games into the season. So we've seen the Wolfpack lose Grayson McCall to injury, and he wasn't even playing well before he got hurt at the quarterback position for Dave Doran. I mean, imagine this. The answer to the best team in North Carolina might be App State. And App State just got rolled 66-20 at Clemson. So whoever you think the best team in this state is not a great team. And App State, remember, in the Sun Belt still has a chance to make a run at that conference's championship game where the Mountaineers have been 2 of the last 3 years. But when Duke and Carolina, they actually begin their ACC schedules against each other. And there's a chance they'll be 4-0 as they face each other on that last Saturday in September. But the details behind those 4-0 starts, if they both get to 4-0 this week, are not quite as pretty as a 4-0 record might suggest.
It's hard for me because I'm a Carolina fan, but I've got kids because, I'm deep in the high school prep world here in the Triad. There's kids I have that are spread out at NC State and Duke and Wake Forest that played here in the Triad, right, for various high schools that I cover and have built sports networks for and whatnot. I saw that my guy, Quayshawn Brown at Duke, had a great game. The wide receiver there that played at East Forsyth. Explosive player. He's finally getting a chance to really show what he can do. There's this guy, NC State literally feels like they've got kids from Charlotte and the Triad or whatever that left and came back. Smothers and Concepcion was at Chambers.
Rogers at NC State.
Rogers is there. He was
star, signed with Ohio State and then returned to the Wolfpack.
And he was at Rollsville, a top wide receiver in the country while he was there a couple of years ago. So it's crazy for me to see the Big Four in particular. Wake has always been kind of knee deep in this area, but NC State's really stepped up. Mac has done a lot. Carolina, where they've really recruited hard this area, and you're not seeing as many kids leave to go to the SEC schools as they were, say, 8-9 years ago, I guess. You've seen kids like a Travis Shaw that was at Grimsley go to Carolina. You've seen these top kids go these places. And even like Bryce Davis that's at Grimsley now, he committed to Clemson. I believe he decommitted. I don't believe he re-selected where he was going yet, but I believe he's going to probably be in state someplace, I would think. It's wild to see that talent here. While we're on that high school topic, while I have you here, kind of a bonus question before we get to the Wake Forest thing. One of the bigger stories that came out too this week is 5-star prep athlete Kendra Harrison, who transferred out of Reidsville to Providence Day because of the NIL rulings going on in North Carolina regarding public high schools. He actually transferred back to Reidsville this week and will probably suit up and play for the Rams this Friday night. They are defending 2A state champs, and they were defending 2A state champs in basketball, undefeated as well, with Kendra playing both. He's rated, I believe, the number 1 tight end in his class, 2026 in the country, and I believe he's a top 25 basketball player in the country as well. Carolina's on the list of a bunch of schools chasing after him. Can you explain why he's able to return back to Reidsville? I know why he's able to go back, but legally, there's been people going, oh, well, how can you do this? How can you go there and then go back in the same season and that kind of thing? From what you are aware of with the NIL situation and what they're trying to do prep-wise in North Carolina, because it looks like they're going to review it again here soon. What have you heard regarding this, and how was Dre able to go back to Reidsville and be able to play this season after he already transferred out once?
Yeah, it's all about what the North Carolina High School Athletic Association and other governing bodies, what their transfer rules say. And something's either prohibited or it's not. And of course, there's sometimes you can ask for exceptions to rules and get those exceptions. But one thing that's changed in this bigger picture is a lawsuit against the North Carolina governing body.
Yep.
You know, we're living in an era where more and more often amateur athletes are suing whether it's the NCAA or a high school athletic association, they don't like restrictions being put on them. They sue and they usually win. So North Carolina, the state, has to revisit the idea of prohibiting name, image, likeness money for high school athletes, just like the NCAA a few years ago had to give up its ban, a ban that lasted a century, on name, image, likeness money at the college level. Again, usually these lawsuits are winning. Now, could it be different at the high school level because there's not as much money involved? If you're involved in major college athletics, part of your argument is, I am a foot soldier in a multi-billion-dollar industry, and I deserve my slice of the pie.
Right.
Obviously, high school athletics are not, generally speaking, a lucrative industry overall. So maybe the argument is different. But generally speaking, the courts have favored more freedom for these athletes. And these high school athletic associations have to come up with a good reason why they should prohibit this off-the-field income for these high-profile high school athletes. If they don't have a good answer to that question, a judge is going to put them on the losing end legally as well. So we'll see how it plays out for that young man. I'm happy if he ends up back at the school he wanted to be. I've seen him play, and he is a phenomenal athlete, and I understand why he's so high in the rankings.
He's a number of videos of him breaking backboards at Reidsville during actual regular season games in basketball. And he commented, I think either on Instagram or X, someone asked how he was able to do it. And he was like, he never accepted any NIL money during the time he was at Providence State. So technically he was still able to go back if he wanted to. And the Providence State head coach, the comments he made, wished him well and everything else, but he made it sound pretty apparent that he wasn't going to be playing for Providence State this year. And I think I just saw WFMY here in Greensboro. Shout out to Brian Hall. I think I saw footage of him already practicing with Reidsville today. So he's already back in Reidsville, and the football capital of North Carolina just regained a 5-star dual threat. He plays defense too. I think he was one of the leaders in sacks in the state. So he's
That's just a proud program right there, man.
It's a monster.
One of the best in terms of state titles in the history of our state.
Oh, and shout out to my guy Jalen Gilkey, who co-hosts with me every other Tuesday. They just did this 4-part documentary over at WFMY on Reidsville and their football program and the 23 state championships they've won over the years. You can get to it by downloading the WFMY app. I think it's WFMY Plus or something to that effect, and it should be there. I think the first episode, Jalen said, it's already out, because I'm going to try to check it out this week as well. But they've done an excellent job, from my understanding, with that. DG in the house with me here. Let's go over to the NFL real quick. Go back over there. I wanted to talk about Tua Tagovailoa and the Miami Dolphins in that situation. Tua suffering his 4th concussion, I think, in the past 3 years. This past Sunday, really on an avoidable play. I hate it. He already had the first down. He just lowered his head into the guy. And I mean, he's already susceptible to concussions. He just signed a huge deal in the offseason. There's a lot of guaranteed money involved in that. I don't know if you're well versed in terms of what he has to be medically cleared or whatever, or be medically unable to compete in order to receive whatnot. A, do you think he's going to continue to play? And B, should he continue to play in your mind? I know it's a weird, tough kind of conversation to kind of do, but I just feel like it's getting to a point now where I cringe when he's playing, because I don't know what's going to happen to him. And Luke Kuechly was like that for me towards the end too, right. Where and Dan Morgan, where it was just like, all right, you've had enough of these. Where when does the player know it's enough? And luckily for Luke and for Dan, they got out of the game early once they had I think it was around about the 4th one or so. But Dan got his head rung a bunch. I do remember he was constantly out for concussions, but Luke had, I think, 3 or 4 and 2 really bad ones, like towards the end, that kind of shifted his mind to, I'm going to go ahead and stop. What do you think, with everything out right now, what do you think is the best option for Tua in your mind if you were him?
Yeah, the scary part here is that even with advances in modern medicine, they know a heck of a lot more about ankles and knees and shoulders and, Tommy John surgeries for baseball pitchers. And even imagine medical advancements on things like open heart surgery. I mean, they could literally take a heart from one person and put it in another person. These are incredible advancements. I bring that up because even the smartest people in the medical community are still trying to understand the human brain. And, if it was my own son playing football, someone I couldn't possibly love anymore, I would have to go in and listen to those experts. And one of the baseline conclusions they've drawn as experts in football, and even it applies to hockey and some other sports, is that those with repetitive concussions tend to be at risk of more concussions for whatever reason. And that would worry me if I'm somebody who cares about Tua Tagovailoa. The Dolphins obviously consulted their medical staff before guaranteeing Tua more than $100 million. I mean,
I hope so. Yeah.
It's a mega billion-dollar industry. You don't just throw around that kind of money. So I'm sure it's in the contract or in the NFL's collective bargaining agreement, how many experts have to conclude that somebody is medically disqualified if it comes to that for concussion-related reasons or any other reasons. But on the Tua side of the decision-making, it's just such an incredibly personal decision, because those doctors are probably not going to say, you're never allowed to play football again. It's rarely that black and white. It's more often, these are the risks, the best we understand repetitive concussions. And then Tua and his family have an enormous decision to make. These guys are competitors. This is what they love to do. And if the doctor says that the door is open for his return, I imagine he's going to consider that very seriously, even as a family man who has to think about the next 50 plus years of his life, not just the rest of his NFL career. I wouldn't want to be in his shoes. The whole situation is very scary. But as if I were his best friend, I would want to sit in on those medical evaluation discussions, and then just try to make the best decision first for your family and second for the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, well put, because I feel like he's going to go on a path that Luke went on, and Dan and others that have had concussion issues. And I know they've got like that new kind of protection helmet thing, but no one wears it in actual games or whatnot. I don't know if that would help. I don't know if that would help make me feel better that he was out there at this point. He's a great talent. But again, to your point, it's like you kind of want to know how to tie your shoes when you're 50. That kind of like it's what you want to be able to play with your grandkids. You want to be able to walk, that kind of stuff. And it really comes into consideration at this point with this guy, where they weren't just like, did he get a concussion? Did he not get it? We don't know for sure. We think he might have. We all knew each time that it happened that that man is concussed. Like, just the images of him on the field, I'm more worried about him getting seriously hurt during a nationally televised game. Like having another, what's the kid's name from Buffalo? DeVar Hamlin, that had the heart thing.
Hamlin, yeah,
on Monday Night Football, something like that, where it's just like jarring, because like it jerks you out of. I'm watching a violent football game, but I'm not thinking about the consequences of what happens if something goes wrong until something goes wrong. And like with this, it's almost like there's more of a chance something can go wrong if he's out there. So are players tentatively playing around him? Are defenders playing him differently? Like all these things come into play, and it's like I don't know what he's going to do. I do know football players from high school to pro. It's really hard to get them to stop. It's really hard. So I don't know if he'll probably be convinced, in my opinion, to not play, because I want to say, well, I don't think he had concussions at Alabama. He had injuries at Alabama. He had the hip thing that was almost like the Bo Jackson injury, but it's 40 years later, and he was able to continue to play. But he didn't have concussions like that. So it's just, I don't know, it's just interesting to see what's going to happen with him regarding that. Bouncing back over into college football, Wake Forest got boat raced in Winston-Salem by the number 5 team in the country, Ole Miss, and head coach Lane Kiffin. And then it comes out that apparently Wake has bought out the other part of this home and home and will not be playing at Ole Miss next year, to the chagrin of Lane Kiffin, who came out during the post press conference, was like, we just found this out. Explain why this is a problem, because they did this literally. They now have like 10 months to kind of find another opponent, and it's not that easy, right?
It's not that easy. So Coach Kiffin's point is, it is very uncommon for an opponent to bail on a game this close to a game. In other words, you might bail on a game that's scheduled for 5 or 7 years down the road, and your opponent has plenty of time to kind of pivot and find somebody else to play. Because schedules are made so far in advance, Ole Miss is in a conference that requires a special waiver from the league office if you don't have a Power 4 opponent on your non-conference schedule. Well, Wake was that Power 4 opponent on Ole Miss's schedule next year. And because they're so highly ranked, they're envisioning themselves as a contender for this year's college football playoff and next year's college football playoff. So every game on your schedule really does matter. So Kiffin is just mad that Wake waited so long to bail. And as you said, the Deacons do have to buy out that game. My pushback on him, even though I don't blame him for his point of view, he's advocating for his program. And if there are however many 130 FBS teams ish,
yeah,
I'll bet you 120 plus don't have a vacancy on next year's schedule. So that Ole Miss is in a predicament, and maybe only one or two of those is a Power 4 school, if any.
Which will ding them for playing them, right?
So then you need the special waiver, or maybe you have to overpay to get somebody to come play you on such short notice. The pushback, if you're Wake Forest, is this. And I say this as a guy who practiced contract law for a long time. Contracts are written in a way that there's literally a clause that says if school A opts out of this game, here's the penalty, right? So, complain to your lawyers, Coach Kiffin.
Yeah.
If they wanted your opponent to feel the pain for, as he said, it's kind of an unwritten rule that nobody opts out this late for a game next season. Okay, maybe it is an unwritten rule. But what's in black and white, the written rule is if you opt out after a certain date, this is what you have to pay. So I can't fault Wake for living up to the terms of a contract that both sides signed without anybody pointing a weapon at them. So, it's not fun, and I would be upset if I were Ole Miss as well. But the Deacs did what they did, and they're living up to the penalty that they have to pay.
I'm curious who Wake is trying to play. Like, it feels like they already have an idea. Otherwise, they wouldn't have pulled out of it, right? But I don't know who they already have waiting in the wings that they want to play that would be a bigger opportunity for them.
Maybe they don't want to play at an Ole Miss program.
Yeah.
That is a runaway freight train right now. And as you said, just boat raced them on Saturday in Winston-Salem.
Yeah, and I didn't want to say it out loud, but yeah, I didn't want to be like, well, Wake just don't want to play them. Like, they'll just take the L and pay it out. And
they may have another official reason, but I promise you part of the reason is we're not going to benefit much from getting our tails kicked at Ole Miss next year the way we just got it kicked at home this year.
We don't want to
go there. By the way, most of the teams in our state would have lost it to Ole Miss just the way that Wake did, just like most would have lost to Tennessee the way State did, and most would have lost at Clemson the way App did. There's no King Kong pounding its chest among the 7 FBS programs in our state right now because the 2 best depth charts, State and Carolina, have quarterback chaos.
Right.
So you could be talented at a dozen different positions, but if you don't know if you have a productive quarterback on your roster who's healthy and available, well, then it's going to be a roller coaster ride.
That's a good segue into our last segment here. Now is pick the best ACC game this weekend. Looking at the matchups here for Saturday, and actually, I guess you can throw Friday in there. Stanford at Syracuse on ESPN at 7:30. But then you get into the heavy hitters. NC State traveling to number 21 Clemson at noon on Saturday. James Madison, that's a sneaky game actually. James Madison coming to Carolina at noon as well. You got Virginia at Coastal Carolina, Georgia Tech against 19th ranked Louisville. Then you get to some of the other ones here. Duke at Tennessee State, 8th ranked Miami at South Florida might be a low key good one. And then the one you mentioned, 3-0 Cal coming in to Tallahassee to take on 0-3 Florida State. You got a Michigan State at Boston College in there too. Out of those, which one stands out to you the most as the must see in the ACC this weekend?
Well, what's crazy is I love the Aggie Eagle Classic. I know that's.
I was hoping you were going to bring that up.
it's an FCS matchup. I'm going to be in Durham for that one. A great reunion of the 2 biggest and best HBCUs in our state. I love that game every year. State at Clemson is interesting, but I think the Tigers are going to take advantage of a freshman quarterback, CJ Bailey, who's thrust into action in an emergency situation because of Grayson McCall's unavailability. A weird one, Des, is that Georgia Tech goes to Louisville.
Mm-hmm.
Louisville is nationally ranked right now, but the Cardinals have not played anybody. So whereas we've seen Miami do some impressive things, like on the road at an SEC opponent in Florida, or we've seen Clemson bounce back from its really bad start. Louisville is in the national rankings, but the Cardinals haven't beaten anybody. And Georgia Tech at 3-1 is the first test of the season for a Louisville squad that last year, remember, played Florida State in the ACC title game. So as we imagine, the top contenders for this year's ACC title game in Charlotte, I think we'll learn a lot more about whether or not Louisville deserves to be on that list, because a number 19 national ranking right now, when you just beat up 2 cupcakes, That's probably the least tested ACC team we have among the 17 this year. And we'll learn a lot more about the Cardinals because Georgia Tech is a pretty solid team that's, already beaten Florida State and crushed some other opponents this year.
I'm glad, and that's where we're going to get out from there. I'm glad you mentioned the Aggie Eagle Classic. We actually have that game on Tobacco Road. We are the audio producer for the Aggie Sports Network. It's powered by Tobacco Road Sports Radio. Shout out to Brian Holloway and all the fine folks over at North Carolina A&T. That game, pregame is at 6:30 p.m. The kickoff's at 7. You can hear it on tobaccoroadsportsradio.com. Myself in the studio, Donald Ware, Al Swan, Billy Covington on the Aggie Sports Network call. A&T beat Winston-Salem State in overtime in a classic 2 weeks ago up here in Greensboro, and then fell this past week to a CAA. I can't even remember who they were playing now at this point, but I hope they weren't looking forward to ahead to Central, because the Aggie Eagle Class is probably their biggest game on their schedule in terms of rivalries for the rest of the year. So we've got that this Saturday here on Tobacco Road, so make sure you check that out. DG will be back with us here in a couple of weeks. Jalen Gilkey will be in next Monday. That's going to do it for us here on the Desmond Johnson Show. Everybody get back to work. Me and DJ are going to find something to do for the rest of the day today. You guys enjoy your Tuesday. I'll see you tomorrow with Mark Pruitt. Everybody's back in action high school football-wise. Everybody was on a bye pretty much last week, so we. We'll go through Mark's top 3 games this upcoming Friday as conference play begins around the state. He'll give you the top 3 biggest games in the tribe. We'll talk to you tomorrow.